Welcome to SAM Conversation, an online program of South Asia Monitor. I'm Col Anil Bhat. Our subject today is India's military applications for space. It's my pleasure to introduce Lieutenant General P.J.S. Pannu, retired, former Deputy Chief in Integrated Defence Staff, and one who has worked he's worked quite a lot on the subject of the military applications in space. Recently, there was a space congress held. Now, the background is that it's since the early 60s that India has been exploring activities in space, and over till very recently, the Indian Space Research Organization has launched up to 35 satellites of not only for India, but some for other countries. But somehow, the military applications for space were not given much of focus. Till recently, in 2019, General Pannu held a conference. Then I think because of the COVID, there was a bit of a gap. But recently we've had this Space Congress. I request General Pannu to carry on from here.
Thank you, Col Bhat. You have touched upon a very important subject, and that too for military applications. Of course, ISRO has been the main agency which got involved with the research and development in the space sector since 60s. Nothing is possible in the research and development when you have to start. So one has to look at innovations, innovative minds, the science and technology that empowers the individuals to start thinking about space. And also, if you have to start early and develop fast, then you have to go for international collaboration. So a lot of collaboration became the key for initial successes of ISRO. Of course, there is an entry barrier and a denial to technology, but that was completed by the research and development. Number of labs were established by ISRO. And today, ISRO stands at a very respectable position that they have not only launched Indian satellites, about 129 Indian satellites have been launched, but also it prides itself on about 242 foreign satellites, about 36 countries that it has launched over a period of time. But when it comes to the use of space, literally speaking, when you start looking at the military applications, the military grade satellites have to be hardened and they have to have a better resolution, better capability for using it for a very specialized role. So over a period of time, it was seen that the ISRO has largely developed a civilian application for civil use, for peace development of the nation, and also to do certain research on earth sciences. But at the same time, since I said that most of the technology are dual use, certain military applications were not by intent put in there, but I think whatever information was available was being put to military use, which was not good enough. It is only during the Kargil conflict it was realized that we do not have enough military capability to look across. We did not know what is happening across the mountain. As a result, it's not only looking across the mountain, it is also looking in depth into the preparations, looking at how the military preparation is happening across in the deeper hinterland preparation of logistics by the adversaries. So therefore, it became extremely important for us to start looking at military applications of space. And I suppose that is where today's discussion is going to be centered around.
Thank you, General Pannu. Considering the fact that China, who I will say is not just an adversary, I give China enemy status, has been doing so much on the ground, not all of which we've come to know, or so, so that we could react. I cannot but help mentioning Galwan in 2020. 60 years after 1962 began with Galwan. That was the first Chinese aggression. And the second Chinese aggression in 2020 also began with Galwan. Now, with all the kind of satellite imagery that we have, I'm sure that this could not have um, been missed, the movement on the ground. Or is it a case of the various agencies not being on the same page or not sharing uh, whatever?
Col Bhat, a lot of information is always known, but the intention of the enemy is unknown, because every year the Chinese carried out forward area exercises in Tibet. They carry out exercises and go back. They inform of their intent, and largely because of the protocols in place, they did not come to certain areas which were very close to the line of actual control, and the routine patrolling would happen, and that is where our troops used to meet. Galwan became one of those things that they were exercising in that area. Their formations had moved very closely. I'm sure every year when this feature takes place, the intelligence agencies keep monitoring. And I think over a period of time, it becomes a repetitive nature to believe that they will only do peaceful exercises and go back in that area. But while the patrols clashed and also the formations were there, I suppose there was a little gap, I suppose, in understanding the intent, or also translating the information into the actual intelligence. And I suppose space is not a very easy subject to deal with. If you look at the Earth observation per se, the military grade satellites have to give you a submetric resolutions. Our satellites, over a period of time, the development and the research and development, of course, made them come very close to submetric, but we generally stayed at the metric level. And at metric level, all that you can see is big vehicles and tanks and infrastructure. But the smaller 30 centimeter satellite resolution, which is a military grade resolution, which is available with other countries, I think is still yet to come, or we are almost close to having that. That is the question of resolution, but it does not mean that you will always use this resolution and you will always have the intelligence around it, because you have to first use the same satellites for carrying out reconnaissance. And once you see that there is something, you detect something is there, then you start looking at certain surveillance and then try to make intelligence out of it. That is a process. So number of repeats are required in Earth observation satellites with military grade. Now, you should know that the maximum resolution for Earth observation is only from a Leo constellation, and Leo constellations are the ones which move very fast. In fact, every 2 hours, the same satellite passes over the area, but not the same area, because by the time the 2 hours happen, there is a general shift about 3,000 kilometers. The Earth also rotates. So therefore, you have to actually have a high resolution satellites that I was describing, to the tune of about 100 of them operating, so that they can largely cover a swath of about 30 to 40 kilometers swath. So because that is every degree moves in about 4 minutes. So when it is a Leo, the speed of the satellite and the number of satellites which are to be put into orbit are huge, humongous. The total number of satellites actually in the world which are on the Earth observation is about 906 all over the world, but all of them are not for military application, and all of them do not have that kind of a military grade intelligence available to them.
Sorry, could you please elaborate Leo, full form?
The Leo orbits are low Earth orbits, which are anything between 150 to about 150 to about 4 to 500. Beyond that, it becomes a medium Earth orbits. Now, the low Earth orbit is closest, and therefore your apertures function better because it is a proximity to the ground. But as you bring the satellites down, the speed becomes so fast that you are hardly on the target for any amount of time, and it actually carries out almost 24 cycles around the satellite. So therefore, in every 2 hours, if you have the same satellite passing over you, how many satellites do you know that would be required to cover the entire Earth with that kind of observation? And then if there is bad weather, or if the enemy is not being seen because of darkness, these satellites will not be able to pick up. So one is that change detection is important to know what is the movement which is happening, whether it is the same object which is moving. So therefore, basically, for technology to be understood for military application is that one is that you need a good constellation of PNT, that is the positioning, navigation, and timing. These are your NAVIC satellites that India has now thrown up. So you need to have a good PNT. Second thing is you need to have a good ISR. I was talking about the Earth observation. So these two put together are the ones who will give you a good military grade capability. But it is a matter of concern how China's space program is indulging in military space collaboration and how she provides intelligence services to its allies. You would also know that China-Pakistan space collaboration poses another dimension of two-front threat to India. Both have established a space Silk Route under the spirit of being iron brothers and all-weather allies. In 2014, you would know, Col Bhat, that Pakistan shifted from an American global positioning system to China's Beidou system, becoming the first country in the world to do so. This makes it possible for the Chinese and the Paki missiles to be used collaboratively and also make drones and aerial platforms operate from either of the countries with tight georeferencing and precision. That is the kind of collaboration. And when you talk about the two-front war, we only keep talking about our formations moving from east to west or north to east or west. But what is important here is the technological collaboration which has been happening, and that we are discussing space has been so tight that this space Silk Route is something that we need to look at and factor that into a two-front threat to India.
Now, in this space congress that we had, where it was, acknowledged that space is the fourth frontier, there was a lot of industry participation by the industry. Has anything emerged for us to be able to begin proceeding for us to proceed on the military application of space as we require vis-a-vis China and Pakistan?
Colonel Bhatt, the Indian Space Congress was a great initiative which was taken this year. Because almost 100 startups are there and 350 space companies operate in this world as far as the privatization is concerned. The Indian Space Congress for the first time made an attempt to bring, if not all, most of these private players to come and participate in the Congress. I think that was one very big thing that happened. Also, there was a participation from ISRO, DRDO in space and the private industry, as I spoke about, and they brought most credible participants to brainstorm on the future of private sector in the business of space in both military and civilian purposes. I was, in fact, chairing a session on the dual-use technology, and it was realized that most of the applications can be used in dual use. It was realized that the Indian space sector is estimated to grow at the compounded annual growth rate of 13%. And by 2025, it is expected to be worth $13 billion of business. Whereas the defense space applications would only contribute to about 8% of it. And I think that is where we need to invest. So these are the key takeaways that there is a dire need to build the industry through innovations and international collaboration, because you cannot invest so much into your own defense applications, because half of the time your satellites are not looking at your own areas of interest, and they are looking at the areas of interest of somebody else because it goes around the globe. So right from the word go, the space business itself is not only a collaborative business, but it is also a collaborative security arrangements. And I think space diplomacy becomes a new chapter that I think we need to look at it very, very seriously.
Would you elaborate a little bit more on space diplomacy?
So as I said, that the moment the outer space is actually different from the any other domain, because the space asset, the moment you send it to the orbit, it has the ability to influence the entire globe within minutes of it being deployed. Imagine you throwing out a satellite; it actually goes over the globe. It is not, private to you, or it is not captive to your own area. So therefore, the orbital nature of the satellite makes them available to any part of the world, and therefore collaborative use becomes a matter of convenience and choice. So space laws and regulations are more to do with maintaining of space discipline and governance rather than laying restrictions on the global reach. So it is easy for any country or space company to do space business globally. It also has the ability to throw up natural international trade partners, and they would collaborate in a manner that how the diplomacy would allow them, the friends, to come together. It is not that you have the geopolitics which dictate the diplomacy. I think it is the geospace which dictates the diplomacy very differently, and that needs to be understood by our diplomatic community, that it is not conventional diplomacy, it is space and technology diplomacy.
We have, with reference to our adversaries, two of them, we have a vast land borders, a very sizable coastal, almost 7,000 odd kilometers of a coastline, and the Indian Ocean, which China very often says is not India's ocean, but it's an ocean which India has a very major presence in, and so far a stabilizing one. There's so much for us to be able to monitor, which we should be able to monitor. Now, when we had the peaceful nuclear explosion, second one in Pokhran, it's very, very strange that very sophisticated American satellites didn't pick that up. It is only when India announced that we have, made a peaceful nuclear explosion, that is how the world came to know. Now, in view of whatever I've said, what are our chances now of being able to, China's doing a whole lot of activity of building villages in various, of which we have seen a few examples of satellite photographs. Where forward, how forward can we go in this? In vis-a-vis, because when we talk about military applications, they should be applicable to what we can do, to monitor our enemies, our two major adversaries' enemies.
Col, but you rightly spoke about our maritime domain. We have about 7,500 kilometers of the coastal frontage, and we have about 15,000 plus as the land frontage. Total about 22,000 is the overall frontier space, and the land, the sea and the land frontier put together. And we also spoke about collusivity between Pakistan and China. You would know that in 2018, Pakistan launched 2 satellites in the orbit using China's Long March rockets. Now, these are Pakistan remote sensing system purchased from China, and indigenous technology evaluation satellite has also been put using China's technology. Also, Pakistan has recently purchased China's Jilin-1, a real-time satellite data comprising high-definition video, optical, hyperspectral imagery that can provide precision position of Indian Army camps across the LC. China recently, in their expo, displayed a radar called the SLC-18 radar that could also find its way to Pakistan. Now, these can detect and track multiple LEO satellites of India. This would diminish the Indian military dominance over Pakistan as far as the Earth observation is concerned, because if you have the space situational awareness of where your LEO satellites are, you would either not do activity at that time, or you would do activity differently to bring a wrong analysis and a wrong conclusion in the mind of an observer. Similarly, as far as China is concerned, the same technology is available with China, that they would hoodwink the Indian Earth observation satellites because of these radars that they have got now, that they will be able to actually look at where are, and not only are, but the Earth observation satellites on the LEO, which are moving around of any other collaborating country. So the trick is to depend on as many Earth observation satellites in the low Earth orbit, whether they belong to India or any other collaborative country, so that the radar does not understand which satellite is looking at that area at a particular time, because actually, as I told you, we require more than 100 military grade Earth observation satellites, which is a very tall figure as far as the budget and performance is concerned. Or also, the moment you get the information for a person who's lived on ground, it is easy for that person to recognize where you are. Satellite does not understand whether this mountain or a river is in this area or that area. You have to actually get a fix of it from the PNT. So the PNT then comes in a very big way, and our NAVIC system is not yet matured. Once the NAVIC system gets matured and it gets integrated with the ISR capability, not only we will get fixes of this, but we will also be able to fight a precision battles using satellites and sensor shooters. We will also be able to get the exact place of activity. Otherwise, it gets very difficult to know where you are. And most of the time, you find that the Chinese have gone subterranean. They have built a number of tunnels and underground facilities. How do you think that the Earth observation satellites are going to pick them up? Because they have put in about months worth of logistics into the underground storage facilities. And if any movement is done during daytime, that they go into the tunnels during night and they come out during night, it will be very difficult for the EO satellites. At the moment, they're not matured to have SAR images. Now, SAR is the synthetic aperture radar satellites, which will start looking at it in collaboration with EO. I think these technologies are yet being matured world over. And I suppose time will come. It is not there yet anywhere in the world that you can keep everything under observation at the military precision all the time.
Thank you. You know, there's a lot which any country which is doing which cannot be disclosed, and in our case, we are also very reticent, in sharing many matters which are related to operations against China or Pakistan. Rightly so. One can only hope that disclosing is not this thing, not the issue here. One can only hope that we are doing whatever is necessary to counter, because there's no dearth of the Indian innovativeness. I have great. So one can only hope that we are, doing all that is required. General Pannu, thank you very much for throwing light on a very complex and a not much known subject on which one hopes we are making the progress that is required to be made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Col Bhat. Thank you for inviting me for South Asia Monitor.